Sorry about that. I had the microphone off. Is there anything you guys want to talk about? How to do something? Otherwise, just chat maybe? Can you hear me, or is it not good for the sound? Kind of set things up a little quick today. There's probably going to be like an 8-second delay between me saying it and you hearing it. So let me know if you can hear it in the next 8 seconds. Okay. So does anybody have any questions on working with their 3D printers? I've got a bunch of different boards we can talk about today. I'm just doing general Q&A. Hopefully I have the board you have. Yeah, there's a little bit of delay between me talking and you actually hearing me. I'm sure other people are going to show up eventually, hopefully. But Joe, do you have any questions on what you're working with? Yeah, I can actually see the people that are in the chat. There's 3 people total. I don't know if everybody can understand what I'm saying. But I could say like, bonjour, ça va? For me, it's ça va bien, but... Or I could say, hola, como está? But unfortunately, I can't do the whole chat in a foreign language. The inductive sensor can be a little bit of fun. I might have to go searching for it if I don't have it, and I might have the opposite one from the tutorial. But here's one of the sensors you might be talking about. The inductive sensor is probably only good when you're working with a metal sensor. So that would have to be a ferrous material. I don't know how easy it's going to be to set up on this board, but the principle works on different boards. I'm actually going to probably change the board to something cheaper just in case I cook it. Right now I'm just looking for a board that's not too expensive. You probably do the MKS S Gen L. Yeah, mine is labeled. Let's see. These are similar, but probably not the same from the one you have. Yeah, the wiring is actually right here. I believe that's ground. And one of these two is signal and voltage. It's been a while since I've done it, so I gotta actually look them up. So let's go over to the browser and see what they say. Hey Ryan, how's it going? Just trying to keep people busy while the world turns. The inductive sensor, and I gotta look at the actual type that I have here. Let me pull up the browser so you can see what I'm doing. So right now I'm looking up the inductive sensor for LJ18. A 3-8-Z/BY. I might have the opposite of what I want here. It might be NPN versus PMP. Been a while since I've done this, but at least we can see what it says. Hopefully. The data sheet. That's not real helpful. The problem with this one is I don't want to plug it in backwards and get the wires all messed up. So I need to look around for a second and see if I can find the actual answer. Give me a second to see what I can find here. I'm actually looking at some old tutorials so I can refresh my memory on this sensor, so this is going to take a second. But this is a relatively easy thing to set up. I think I did a tutorial on this a while ago. Let's see. Fixed mount sensor probe. I think it's SKR version 1.4. Turn off the sound here for a second. I have to jump through this and see if I can actually find it. So on this board, we're going to probably use the Z-axis, which is... I'll show you where that is in 2 seconds. Let me just swap over to it. So right here, we're going to use either Z-min or Z-max. I'm going to go probably with Z-minimum, just so we can see if it works. But I got to figure out the actual coloring of the wires. I'm guessing blue is going to be ground in this case. I think brown's going to be voltage. And then black is going to be signal. So, to do this, I'm going to do blue, black, and then brown's going to be voltage, I believe. And hopefully I'm doing this right. I'm actually going to look at this too. So, hopefully I have the right sensor. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to apply power to the system just for a moment. And if you see smoke, I'm doing something wrong. So I just connected the board. And I'm going to move this towards metal and see what happens. If we see smoke, there's a problem. So I moved it towards the metal on it. Let me see if I can see what you're seeing. Let me move this over a little. So the metal is triggering it. So now I'm going to actually open up Pronterface and let you see what I'm seeing. Just have to open it. And I'll bring it up so you can see now. So what you're going to see is the board in Pronterface. So I'm going to connect to Pronterface and just see what's going on by typing M119 and pressing enter. And as you can see, everything says triggered. So I'm going to move the sensor over it so you can see the light. And I'm going to do the command again. This is just to make sure that we have it wired properly. So I'm going to place it right here. And I'm going to hit send. And nothing happens. So it may be that there's something wrong with my connection, or I'm using the wrong type. So let me see if I've got the other one lying around. I do. So I'm going to try the NPN, which is this one. And as you can see, it's going to be a different connection. So I'm going to disconnect this for the moment. I'm going to note where the wires are. And I've got to fix a wire on this one, so that's going to be fun. So I guess you're going to see me change a wire as soon as I find one. This is going to take a second. So I'm going to take this out. I have to get some shrink wrap possibly to do this. I wasn't expecting this question, but I understand you guys need to know. So there's the wire. You're going to, I guess, see how they do it for NASA as soon as I figure out where the actual stuff is. So let me see if I can find the wiring packages I have everywhere. Gonna need one of these for shrink wrap. And then I gotta find a jumper wire. So this is gonna take a second to see if I can find one that's actually the right color. So here we go. I'm actually gonna break this wire in half. Then I'm gonna strip it. I'm actually gonna strip it a little bit longer. Gonna turn it. Gonna put the wire wrap on it. This is shrink wrap, by the way. Gonna slide that up. So it's in here. Gonna take these two wires, cross one this way, cross the other one this way, and then I'm going to turn this around the wire, and I'm going to do the same for this one. Until it's in position. Then I'm going to take this and slide it over it. Like so. And this will give us a complete wire again. Now I don't have a heat gun that I can heat up right away, so I'm going to take out a lighter. And I'm just going to shrink it real quick. This is the poor man's heat shrink dryer. So now that I got that figured out and fixed, now I gotta go back and double check my wiring. So the wiring right here, black looks like voltage, brown looks like voltage. I'm misreading something here. And then blue might be ground because it says negative. So let me double check. Okay, blue. Gonna be ground. Then brown's gonna be voltage. And then black. And hopefully we won't set anything on fire. So I'm gonna plug it back in. So smoke test looks okay. Let's see what happens with the sensor. The sensor goes on. So I'm gonna go back into Pronterface and see what's occurring. And let's see what we do. We need to connect. And then we need to check the status. They say triggered. Move over it and see if it changes. So it says open. So now we know we've got the right one. It's actually PNP. So let me check on the chat because I was busy trying to figure that out. Okay. That's great. I'm sorry I can't pronounce your name very well, but let's see. To configure this in firmware, it's going to take me a second because it's been a long time. So I'm going to have to pull up the firmware. Just give me a moment to set it up in downloads. So right now I have to unzip a new version of the firmware because I want to start from scratch. This might be a messy tutorial. Well, a messy answer to a question because it's been a long time. But what we'll do is we'll first load the firmware and see what happens. So I'm going to actually go in here and disconnect. This way we'll have the connection free so that we can use it in VS Code. So I'm going to transition over to VS Code so you can see what I'm talking about. So inside VS Code, I'm going to go to my downloads folder in a moment. I haven't actually extracted it apparently. And then what I'm going to do is actually open it. So I'm going to go to the Explorer. This is going to take probably a minute or two because my computer's a little bit tied down. So let's see where I am here. Looks like it's about a minute 30 seconds away. So let me look at the chat for a second. So for the TMC 2209s, I believe they're UART. So it's going to be one jumper on this board, I think. Let me disconnect it for a second and show you what I'm talking about. I think you're talking about the V1 board, correct? For the MKS S-Gen L. Let me transition over to the screen so you can see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do for the moment is pop off one of these jumpers. Or excuse me, these steppers, if I could speak correct English. And these are TMC 2208s, the ones I was looking for the other day. So I'm actually going to find a TMC 2209, see if we can do that. It might take a second because I've got a bunch of drawers to go through. So here's a TMC 2209. Essentially, it's the same configuration on this board, except we've got to flip it over and verify where the UART is connected, and it's not very well written, so I'm going to probably go to the manual to verify this. For UART for 2209s, or I'm sorry, 2208s. So let me go to the browser for a second. And inside the browser, I'm going to do a search on TMC 2209 MKS S-Gen L version 1.0. And I really don't want to share my videos with you too much, so we're going to look for GitHub. And here's the actual location where you can look it up. So what we're looking for is probably the data sheet, but in this case, the data sheet's probably going to talk about the actual controller chip, which is the LPC something. I think it's 1768, but it could also be the manual. So scrolling down through this, it actually looks like it's a manual for the board. Now the configuration might not be exactly the same, but it looks pretty close, because they have two versions of this board. So if you scroll down here a little bit, hopefully they'll have some information. Or maybe they'll just talk about other things other than what we're interested in. Wow. Way too much information about nothing. Automatic level settings. Stepter. So what we're looking for is they're talking about the actual jumpers. So what we're looking for, that's SPI. And then for this one, for UART, I don't know if they're covering it. That's amazing. Let me scroll back up and see if I missed it. SPI. Stepter. Yeah, it looks like maybe it's not in the manual. So, I think I know what the answer is, but let's see if we can check a different place. So, they have a wiki, and down here they're probably going to have the MKS TMC 2208. And then they have a somewhat weird, funky guide down here. But what they're talking about is this pin right here, which equates to right here. So let me transition back over so you can see. This pin is what they're talking about for a jumper. Of course, the directions are so awesome. So you're going to place a pin there. Then you're going to take this, find the enable pin, which is right here. It says EN. You're going to place it over here, and you're going to push it down. And that sets that up. There may be a jumper that you have to set over here. My memory's kind of lapsed on looking this up. So we'll look at that in a minute. But essentially all we're going to do is hook a motor to it, and we'll do both in the same tutorial. Because I'm not going to change anything for the end step on this yet until we see what the results are. So I'm going to connect that up there. And then there's no power in the system yet. So let me find the correct actual connector. As you can see, I have connectors with ferrules on them. I recommend doing this to control your stray wires. And I marked this for voltage and ground. So to hook this up, this is de-energized. That means it's not plugged in. I'm going to slide them in like so. I'm going to slide this one in and tighten them into the board. That way it's safe. These are insulated, so you don't have to worry about actually having your hand touch them by accident. And then I'm going to put the power over here for a second. And open the firmware for you like I said I was going to do about 10 minutes ago. So I'm going to go to VS Code. Inside VS Code, we're going to go to the Explorer. We're going to open the folder. We're then going to go to the Downloads folder, the Marlin folder, then the second Marlin folder, and select the folder. This will open up our environment. Inside the environment, we're going to go to Marlin. Excuse me. We're going to go to Marlin source for boards.h. We're going to search on MKS, SGen, and here's our board. I'm going to copy that. It's the LPC 1768. So we're going to remember that for our platform.io.ini, but we're going to set this up first by searching on motherboard. We're going to highlight the ramps, paste over it. We're going to change the serial port to -1. That way it'll default to what we're looking for. Then we're going to search on the A4988. This will bring us to our steppers. I'm just going to enable the X stepper. And we need to change this to the TMC2209. So up here, they're all listed. So you're going to highlight it, copy it, paste it. That's all you need to do. It's not standalone in this case. So down here, there's other configurations that you can do. I'm actually going to skip this. In my tutorials on steppers, I talk about it a lot. We're only going to do the 1/16 of a step. So we're going to go over to configuration advanced. I'm actually can't do the end stops in this particular configuration for sensorless homing, but I'll show you how to set the actual millivolts for this. So right here, they're using root mean square. Here's the formula for it. You're going to multiply by 1.414, which is the square root of 2. So I'm actually going to say 750 for the approximation instead of 800. There are other things you can set down below. You can set your custom pins for certain steppers. This is actually SPI. Then they have probably more SPI. Not sure what these are for, but right now we're going to be using Stealth Chop by default. They also have the hybrid threshold mode where you can vary between them. And there's certain debugs that we can turn on. Here's where you turn on sensorless homing. That may involve removing a jumper to get this to work, or adding a jumper. Right now I have them on by default, so we're not going to be able to test that. I need to actually have a full printer to work with that, and I'll probably attempt that Friday night, but for today I'm going to avoid it. So now that we got all that configured, mostly I'm not going to use the debug. I'm actually going to go over to platformio.ini, and like I said before, this is the LPC 1768, and I'll show you where I derived that from, because I know this one pretty clear. Go to boards.h. Here's the category it's under, so I know that's what the value is for the chipset. So now I'm just going to actually upload to the board by clicking the arrow on the right, and then I'll pop into the chat and see what's going on. Thank Ozen. So the MKS RepRap software, are you talking about Repetier for the firmware? Okay. Let's see what we got for the actual compile. Sorry, I was peeking into the chat. So the compile might not be working too well today. Oop, I forgot I made some mods to this, so I might not be able to show you this. I'm working on setting up Python under the hood, and it might not be active, so let me close it for a second. I'll put it on the regular monitor and see if I can fix it while we're doing this. Otherwise, we're probably going to have to cut this short so I can do some software fixes on my computer. Or maybe I can install Python under the hood while we're doing this. Yeah, I gotta get my Python script working. Apparently I broke it last night. So let me see if I can populate Python while we're doing this. So in the background, I'm installing Python, hoping that I can make this work while we're talking. So Python's almost installed. But I may have to fix the pathing. That's something I forgot to fix today, so we'll see what happens. Okay, it looks like I may have fixed it. So I'm going to transition back so you can see what I'm doing. If I can transition back to the right thing. Apparently you're seeing the chat while I try and fix the actual viewing for you. So give me a second to change the window capture back to what it's supposed to be. Oh, I might have to close the session for VS Code and reopen it. Give me a second to fix that. I actually had to finish for the compile first. This is why I normally do recorded videos so you don't get to see all my mistakes, but I figured you might as well see it warts and all. So as soon as this actually finishes, I'll fix it. I don't want to stop at mid-compile, but it's starting to look like it might be a good idea. But I also want to see if the compile actually works, so... But on the flip side, your compile is going to be a lot quicker. So I might be able to do 2 or 3 compiles just to show you what's going on. But it just finished, so I'm going to actually reopen it. And hopefully it'll show up in the actual browser. That's so weird. There we go. Okay, now you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So I just transitioned back. Apparently I had to reinstall Python to deal with the situation. Because I had uninstalled it last night to work on something. So what I'm going to do is do the upload like I said I was going to do about 10 minutes ago. It should be slightly quicker. Without Python, this apparently had some issues. But now I'm having other issues. So that might be because of me disconnecting the USB. So let me reconnect the USB to the board. And try it again. So I'm reinstalling or recompiling. It's going to hopefully copy over to the drive, which it just did. So I'm going to power cycle the actual board, bring it back up, and it should have the firmware on it that we just installed. So I'm just waiting for a pop-up of my USB drive to make sure it's working. And it looks like it's good. So I'm going to transition over to the camera, and hopefully we won't set the board on fire. So now I'm going to take the plug and actually apply power to it. If you see smoke, I made a mistake. So I don't see any fire. So that's good. And I got the stepper right there. So I'm going to go over to Pronterface so you can see what I'm doing there next. And inside Pronterface, you should be able to see both things. So I'm going to connect in Pronterface. So I'm now connected. And I'm going to move the x-axis and see if it works. So it does work. So we're actually using the TMC2209. The other configuration I'll have to show you when I have an actual printer in front of me for the end stops and probably make sure that my compiler is working. But let's check the end stop. So right now it says that the Z axis is triggered. And let's hold it over here. If it goes to open, we got to fix this. It says open. So we've got the logic backwards. So I'm going to transition over to VS Code and show you how to fix that. In VS Code, you go over to here. I'm going to do a search on end stops. And I've got to find the actual setting for it. So it's going to take me a couple. Let me go to the top of the file so it can speed this up. Let's see, end stop pull-ups. So we're on the Z axis. So what we can do is change this to true, and that'll flip the logic. So let me power down the system for a second. So I took the power out. I'm going to disconnect inside Pronterface so that I can then upload firmware again. So let me make sure I'm on the right screen, which I am. So I'm going to hit the upload button, and this will flip the logic to what we want it to be. Let me pop over to the chat and see if anybody's still there. Hey, Adrian. So the problem that we're having right now is the logic is backwards for the end stop, and all I was doing was fixing that. So as soon as this actually finishes compiling, we can upload it again, which it will do automatically for us because we're doing upload. And then I'll power cycle the USB power to the board. Verify that I can see the USB drive on the board. And then I'm going to plug everything in again. So right now we're only functioning on USB power. And I want to make sure that the end stop has the right logic. Essentially what I'm using the actual, let me pull it up so you can see that while this is running. Essentially what's occurring right now is that the logic that we're seeing is backwards. It's saying triggered when it's not near metal, and we want it to say that it's triggered when it's near metal. So I flipped the logic in VS Code, and that was the operation that I was doing. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm just inverting the logic of the Z minimum, and it will still function like an end stop, it's just going to be, in this case, a metal probe end stop. And this one functions on 5 bolts, and it's actually NPN, but I have a tutorial on this where I outline the parts. It's the NPN normally open, and the part number is in the tutorial. So now that that's updated, I'm actually going to power cycle the actual board, so I'll let you see what's occurring. So I'm taking the power off the USB, and now I'm putting it back on. And so all it's done right now is reloaded the firmware, pardon me. And I'm checking to make sure the dates are right for the time that I'm working on it, which is 5:55 p.m. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now show you this again in Pronterface. So I'm going to transition back. Inside Pronterface, I'm going to connect to the actual device. It says I'm connected down here. I'm going to check the end stop. It says open. I'm actually going to plug in or energize the system, so you don't want to get your hands close to it. Now that it's energized, I'm going to double check again to make sure that it says what it says. Now I'm going to move this over this, and I'm going to do it another time. So now it works as an end stop being triggered. There's also a way to do it as a fixed mount sensor, but if you look at my SKR 1.4 tutorial, it's kind of okay. It probably needs to be corrected because I'm adding an additional trigger. But if you want to use it just as an end stop, that's one option. If you want to use it for probing, then it's another option. And I probably need to fix that tutorial because I think I made a mistake in it. But someone pointed it out in the comments. But that's the way it should look. You shouldn't have an additional one here. But today I got to move my car in about 3 minutes. So tomorrow, if you have questions, you can always go to my Discord and let me know what you have for that question for the day. And hopefully at 5 o'clock, I'll have time to actually bring up a tutorial and not have to fix things I broke the night before. But thank you for taking the time to watch today, and take care, and thanks for all the positive comments and all the super chats. I greatly appreciate it. If I missed any, let me know. You're welcome. So everyone take care, be safe. Remember to wear your mask in public. And I'll talk to you tomorrow because I'm going to know you're all safe. So take care.